Thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring today's video. I'm Subbrief. This is the naval news, the nature of my game. So we have big news coming out of the Pentagon today. This is huge. They're announced that they're working with other government agencies. I presume that means NSA and DIA to scour social media domestically. And this is new and also maybe violate some free speech laws. This is probably going to be contested in federal court eventually. But what they're announcing they're going to do is go through all social medias, whether it's Reddit, 4chan, Discord channels, and look at things even like private direct messages so that they can see and see what other stuff might be out there that they're unaware of. This could just be the tip of the iceberg, if you will, of leaked classified information. This all stems from some jack in Massachusetts who allegedly, this is just alleged, he's just accused of this, posting classified information on his Discord channel that only had like 20 or 30 members. And it sat there for a few weeks where it was then shared apparently on larger channels, on other social medias, and then eventually found by the media itself, which then found, that's how the Pentagon found out about it, is whenever the news started reporting on it. So very embarrassing for the Pentagon in general, and they're taking swift action to crack down on this. It's the right thing to do. Stop posting classified material on social media. That's freaking dumb. Okay, don't use that to win internet points and win an internet argument with some guy you don't even know, and might be a foreign officer trying to get you to tell them information by, poking you into an argument. Okay, be smart about this stuff. Rant over. So this gentleman, Jack, enjoys the presumption of innocence as someone who's been accused of something that I did not do. I really respect that. And I would also draw your attention to the LHD that burnt down in San Diego a couple years ago. They did an investigation. They charged one military service member, very similar to what we're seeing here. And whenever the court case was finished over a year later, the investigation was so flawed, they found that service member not guilty. And he continued on with his service after that. So I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying keep an open mind. Give the man the presumption of innocence, because that's what we do here in this nation. Now, we do have our own Discord channel here. I would invite everybody to come over to it. We do not post classified information on our Discord channel, but we do have a very active open source intelligence community with hundreds of members here. Like, it's one of the best sources for open source intelligence on my Discord channel. You get access to this via the Patreon. All right. So enough self-promotion. Now a word from our sponsor, Private Internet Access. Thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Private Internet Access is a low-cost, high-speed, virtual private network service provider. When you're connected to the internet on public Wi-Fi or even at home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Hackers that are connected to the same Wi-Fi can view your keystrokes, passwords, browsing, and personal data. Private Internet Access helps protect you by hiding your IP address and encrypting your data through their world-class server infrastructure. Using the internet without PIA is like using a changing room with no door. Everyone can see your shorts and will leave disappointed. I use Private Internet Access every time I travel. It ensures that my connection is private and encrypts peer-to-peer file sharing. PIA has a no logs policy. This has been proven multiple times in court by a third-party independent auditor. Private Internet Access also allows you access to region-restricted content from all major streaming services, so when I'm meeting my sources in Australia, I can still watch my favorite shows. PIA is available on all platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Android, Linux, and iOS, and one subscription can be used on 10 devices at the same time. Use my link in the description to grab an 83% discount on Private Internet Access. That's just $2.03 a month, and you get 4 extra months for free. Sign up with Private Internet Access is risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and 24/7 customer support is available. Use my link in the description and protect yourself with Private Internet Access. All right, we're back. I want to reiterate one big thing. Private Internet Access offers you peer-to-peer encryption, and that might be the last bastion of privacy you find in online communication. So please take advantage of the link in the description, okay? All right, credit to Naval News for this story. This is great news. I love it whenever there's good news about the Navy, because we've made so many mistakes over the past 20 years when it comes to ship construction. It looks like we're finally turning that around by building warships again. That's right, folks. The era of the LCS and the Zumwalt and the experimental designs is behind us now. They're actually ending those production lines because the same shipyard that builds the LCS is going to be building the Constitution class, and the keel laying ceremony is in August of this year. And I'd love to go. I don't know if that's a private event, if I need an invite. I don't know who I need to talk to, but I certainly would love to attend the keel laying ceremony of this ship here. So they're going to be building at least 3 of these. They have 3 right now that are named. The Constellation is the first one, Congress is the second, and USS Chesapeake will be the third one built there. There is a 4th one that's planned. It's not named yet, so that's probably going to come out later this year. So one of the big things about this ship is not only does it actually have weapons, unlike the LCS has long-range weapons, it's a multi-mission ship. It can do everything: anti-air, anti-surface. It's a multi-role frigate. It's light. It's fast. It's agile. This is the stuff that's really important for big navies, because those carriers, those large ships, are so expensive and demand so much maintenance and personnel. You need smaller ships like this around them to assist and protect them. And this is what this ship is going to do. This is going to be much more than just a picket ship like we used to have in the Cold War. It can do everything. It can actually operate alone if it needs to. It also has intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance equipment on board to do that. So it can do just about every role that is required by modern naval warfare. Here's a great graphic produced of the ship there, giving you some details about the hull itself. I'll let you read that while I tell you about what's in progress. And this was a little surprising to me. The hardware on board this ship is not compatible, or does not communicate with the SM-6 missile. And the SM-6 is an incredible missile, very long range, fast, anti-ballistic. It can do everything. But it's also very expensive, right? And that this ship is, as of now, isn't mandated to have the hardware to shoot that. That certainly could be added into the future. But what Congress is trying to do right now is mandate that the SM-6 capability is added to the ship. And also, and this kind of surprised me, these new frigates do not have the capability mandated to fire the Tomahawk missile. And that's a good idea to add that. That's like the backbone of our cruise missile inventory right now, is the Tomahawk cruise missile. So those are not mandated by Congress yet. Congress is working on making that a mandate. I would caution Congress, not that they listen to me, but part of the problem with the LCS design was the procurement process and, of course, the design itself. And then to try and fix that, Congress got involved making mandates. And that ended up actually making the problem a little bit worse and slowing everything down, and cost went up. So I appreciate Congress trying to mandate additional capability to this ship, but this looks like it's already a good warship. The SM-3 missile that it does shoot has ballistic missile capability in some of its variants, and is also relatively inexpensive to the SM-6 and very capable. So we've got a really good ship already. Let's not mess it up, okay? Adding the Tomahawk, though, I have to agree with that. We should probably add the Tomahawk capability to this thing, all right? All right, let's take a look at the graphic for United States Naval Institute fleets around the globe. These are the American fleets. We have the Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group in Japan, as well as the American Amphibious Ready Group. That's the Marine Amphibious Group. They're in port. They're ready to go. They've been, doing maintenance and upkeep for months now. This is their forward deployed position. This is where they're stationed, essentially. And they're ready to go at a moment's notice. Imagine a sports team with, some players on the bench that just want to get out there on the field, and they're ready for the call from the coach to go do something. And it's just not their time yet. We need them to be fresh and, fully prepared for action when called upon. So just south of that, we have the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, and they're just east of Taiwan, keeping an eye on that operation that concluded now, but was going on for over a week, where China was simulating a blockade, their own words, not mine, simulating a blockade exercise around the island of Taiwan. The Chinese aircraft carrier Shenandoah is very near where the Nimitz is now. I don't know if she's still there, but it's likely if she is, Nimitz is operating in the vicinity of that carrier. Now, over a 3-day period, April 5th to April 7th, the Chinese carrier launched a recorded 120 sorties, flights, off the flight deck. To give you an idea of how low that number is, the Nimitz can do approximately the same number of sorties in a 12-hour period. So we have, a far more capable carrier in that theater at sea, and one in port very close by, that can, exceed the Chinese carrier performance by multitudes. Okay, down in the South China Sea, you have the Makin Island there. That's another amphibious ready group that's got the Marines on it. They're escorted by destroyers and submarines, of course. They're operating in the South China Sea, and they drove a freedom of navigation course near Mischief Reef. That's the reef that's been one of many developed with an airfield and radar stations by the Chinese, even though there's claims by other countries of having that territory not being Chinese territory. That argument's been going on for years. The point is, the Chinese have been operating out of that island for a long time now, many years, with Coast Guard and even some military ships, and harassing other nations. Well, until the Americans come by with our destroyer, and do you know what they did? Not a damn thing. They shut the hell up. Everyone starts being on their best behavior whenever the American destroyers are getting close to the Mischief Reef there. So good job, showing the flag, going through waters that are international and open to everybody. And China recognizes that and didn't do and stop their harassing behavior. The problem is, the moment we go away, they're going to start harassing the Philippine Coast Guard again, and any nation that gets near them. But for Mischief Reef, the Philippines are the closest one, and that's the one they most often have an encounter with. So it's almost like we need a continuous presence there just to keep China from acting like a bully. China really is just... They've really exposed themselves. I got to be honest with you. With this operation that they launched early in April for about, 10 days, it exposed just how weak they are instead of how strong they are, because they never really had concentration and force. It took them 10 days to operate. It took them like 5 of the 10 days just to get up to a high tempo, and that tempo was not high by American standards. So... they're more bark than bite at this time. Now, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Put that stuff in the comments. I'll read it, okay? Let's move over to the Mediterranean Sea. The George H.W. Bush finally coming home. Those sailors are probably exhausted. They've been operating in the Med for like 7 months. So it's been since August, so however many months that's been. And they are finally on their way back to the United States. Good job for them. I'm sure their relief is already underway. It's not on the graphic, so we're not going to talk about it. And then finally, Carl Vinson. The carrier strike group out there, they have been really working hard to test some interesting systems that we're not going to talk about, but they're also getting ready to go on a large deployment, right? And so that requires that they do some basic safety training. One of them is called Tailored Ships Training Availability Final Evaluation. They've passed that. That's a big step forward, and they're getting ready to go into what's called basic training exercise. And there's nothing basic about running a carrier strike group, okay? But that's just what this next phase is called. They're going to get through this basic training, and they're eventually going to work up to what's called Computex. That will happen before the end of the year. And that's kind of the Computex is the most stressful examination that I'm aware of for any fleet. And we'll talk more about that when it actually happens. But that's what they're working up for now. So great job to everybody on the Carl Vinson and the supporting ships around it. You guys are doing a great job. I know it's exhausting work. I mean, so just keep it up, okay? You're doing great. Now, let's go back to Taiwan for a second, because I have an idea. I want you to tell me what you think of this. So the simulated exercise around Taiwan over a 10-day period by the People's Liberation Army, Air Force, and Army Navy, it was a simulated quarantine or a simulated blockade of Taiwan. So I want to take our attention back to the previous blockade, if you will, of Cuba, the Cuban Missile Crisis back in October 1962. So what was going on back then was the Soviet Union was moving SS-4 and SS-5 nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles into Cuba, and that put the large, southeastern portion of the United States all the way up the eastern coastline within range of these nuclear missiles. This was unacceptable to President Kennedy at the time. When this was discovered, they immediately wanted to stop these shipments, but they could not blockade officially Cuba, because in accordance with the 1856 Paris Declarations respecting maritime law and the laws of naval war meeting in London in 1909, so over many centuries, the term blockade is basically an act of war. If you announce that you're blockading something, a port of a nation, you're essentially declaring war on that nation. So obviously President Kennedy in 1962 did not want to take that step of blockading Cuba, even though that's what it was called in the papers and media at the time. The word that President Kennedy used was quarantine. You can quarantine a nation or a port and it not be an act of war, phonetically in accordance with the word of law here, okay? And that's how the Cuban Missile Crisis began, by basically quarantining Cuba. Now, what happened there, we all know in hindsight, is both sides eventually backed off, the missiles were removed, and nuclear war that everyone thought was going to happen was averted. But we're now in 2023, moving into 2024. What if, and I propose this to you, China quarantines Taiwan? China likes to use the term lockdown. So maybe we say China locks down Taiwan. China still has Taiwan as a province, a rogue province, but a province of China. And China has a history recently of quarantining large cities and large portions of the country because of the pandemic. So what if they just simply used, not necessarily the pandemic, but quarantined Taiwan? What would be the result of that? Well, if they tried to prevent access to and from, obviously that's a blockade in effect, but being a quarantine, it would put the ball in the court of Taiwan and even the United States to take action. Who's going to be the first airplane into Taipei after the quarantine is set? Will that airplane be challenged, or the ship? Will the ship be challenged by the Chinese Coast Guard trying to break the quarantine? I think this is going to happen. I don't know when, obviously, I'm not a Nostradamus, but I would look in the future for China raising the concern and, maybe throwing out some terms like lockdown on the entire island of Taiwan, just to see how Taiwan and the United States reacts to that. Keep that in mind. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, one last thing here. Check me out on LinkedIn. If you work in, Navy, in the Navy community or in the OSINT community, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to cover material that you're talking about or that you know about. Also, if you want to know more about submarines and ships, I have a 24/7 continuous stream of all of my lectures over on Twitch, and that's free. You can go to twitch.com/subbrief, watch all my stuff for free over there. I appreciate all the views we have now. There's hundreds of people there right now. Make it 500. I want it to go up. And then finally, my email address, aaron@subbrief.com, comes right to me. I have no filters. I read everything that comes through my email box, and you can send me corrections, ideas. A lot of you send me ideas, and I really appreciate that, with links. Okay, so keep that communication up. This is really working out for us. We are getting geared up for a brand new subbrief coming out May 5th. Cinco de Mayo is going to be the next big subbrief, and that's really it's going to be awesome. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.